So we've been wanting to see how this labor agreement's going to go, and obviously makes a big difference on a contract this big. But obviously, we're optimistic, and our goal is to get it done before before you have to tag, last day to tag.
Are there plans to talk to his guys while you guys are here?
We have. Will we talk to him?
Yes.
Hopefully so. We don't have a firm meeting set up yet, but the intent would be to visit with him. He also has several of our other players as well.
Well, last time I did.
Back, would that help or hurt you guys a little bit?
Do what?
By pushing the franchise tag back a couple of days, does that help or help?
More time always helps, I guess.
Well,
I don't know that it hurts or helps, but it certainly, I don't think it hurts at all.
why haven't you guys talked since early in the season?
I just don't think, we've had our hands around what the next steps are. And, we were pretty, obviously we ended up getting it done because they were pretty entrenched with their thoughts and we were pretty entrenched with our thoughts. And I think really that's the facts of where we were.
Right.
Certainly we've done a lot of thinking about it and looking at it, and we'll see where we end up.
Any hindsight, or that maybe that was a mistake by being?
I'm not going to hindsight.
Okay.
You'd like not to use a franchise tag on him. You'd like to do a long-term deal. But
Yes.
if you have to franchise tag, is it accurate to say it would be the exclusive variety?
I'm not going to get into any of the details of the contract.
Right.
Franchising and that type of thing.
Right.
Our goal is to get it done with Dak, and I know he wants to be here, and we want him to be here long term. And he's our guy. We've got nothing but the highest regards for him, and we want to get the deal done.
However, the deadline has now come and passed for Prescott and the Cowboys to meet in the middle and strike an accord on a long-term deal, meaning Prescott will now have to settle for a cool $31.4 million and playing on the franchise tag this season, allowing him to bet on himself in hopes of cashing in on some long-term job security once the last down of football is played in 2020. Jeff Kolb is a sports reporter and weekend sports anchor for Fox 4 in Dallas. He joined me this week to discuss the path forward for Prescott and the Cowboys as the two sides look to put the contract impasse in the rearview mirror in hopes of capturing the ultimate prize at the end of the season. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. So, Jeff, first of all, we want to take some time to welcome you to the show, and we're excited to talk a little Cowboys football and Dak Prescott with you this afternoon. So glad to see you today, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Kev. Appreciate it.
So when we look at what happened with the contract situation with Prescott and the Cowboys, I'm wondering if you can finish this sentence for me. Why don't you think Dak Prescott has a contract, a long-term extension?
I think it's pretty simple. I think Jerry Jones is stubborn. It was pretty clear throughout the latter part of these negotiations what the sticking point was. You had Jerry and the team wanted Dak to sign for 5 years, and Dak only wanted to sign for 4 years. And since they really started negotiating, really this time last year, Kevin, Dak has just gained leverage over time. And it's kind of mind-boggling why Jerry and the brass of the Cowboys didn't do what they needed to do to get a deal done by now, as he just continues to gain leverage. And, you see the Patrick Mahomes deal come down. You still got a Deshaun Watson out there and other guys that'll be coming. So the price tag we think will still go up for Dak over time. Obviously, now they can't negotiate until after the season because he's on the franchise tag. But that's really the bottom line. Dak was never going to settle or take a discount. He's made peanuts compared to what he's making now on the tag and what he will make with a long-term deal. So why was he going to compromise with Jerry Jones? And Jerry didn't budge, so here we are.
And you bring this up, and I totally agree with you in terms of the Cowboys losing leverage. I don't think they should have waited until the last year of his contract to get this done. They started negotiations the previous season on a long-term deal, but never finish it. So do you think that played a role in Prescott getting leverage?
Dak never seemed to mind that this thing came down to the final season. Dak's not a guy that's fazed by much, at least not outwardly from anything we can tell. He didn't mind playing out the final year of his contract. We would ask him about it in locker room sessions. He would just put his literal cowboy hat on and basically say, I'm going to be a cowboy. So he's felt confident that something will get done. And I think he probably still does. But I do think he's frustrated now, and he didn't outwardly say that. But his brother put out a tweet. I don't know if you saw.
I did, yeah.
He was Tad Prescott, his older brother. He was frustrated, and I don't think that he would have tweeted what he did if he didn't know that Dak was feeling a similar frustration. So that concerns me a little bit moving forward, and hopefully, for Cowboys fans, hopefully they will be able to come together on something going forward. But it gets interesting now too when you look at the franchise tag and how that works. They could potentially tag Dak 2 more times. Actually, it won't happen because next year would be about $38 million, and then the following year would be up in the $50 million range. So that will never happen. But
Yeah, it's financially unattainable,
I
right?
think I think some people have the sense now that they try and tag him next year as well, and I think that would really not sit well with Dak.
So do you think, I know that he had discussions or previous discussions with Kirk Cousins who told him not to be afraid of the tag. Do you think that played into his decision at all to sort of wait it out?
Could have. It definitely could have. I mean, everyone saw how Kirk had this unprecedented success with playing things out and getting the money he's gotten. And for not being a top 5 quarterback, I mean, you have to give Kirk Cousins a lot of credit, right, for accomplishing that. Dak he's been willing to bet on himself, and I guarantee you, even this past week when they didn't get the deal done, I'm sure that Dak's agents asked him, hey, do you want to give in and get this thing done? And I'm sure Dak had the final say in saying, hey, let's roll the dice one more time.
Do you think his agent played a role in this at all in sort of influencing his decision? Because he certainly works for the client, but Todd Franz has sort of had a hard stance on negotiating with the Joneses. So where do you think his situation lies there?
Oh, I certainly do. I do. And Dak is, especially during the season, Dak will always say, I'm not even thinking about the contract deal. That's what he said this past fall. That's all Todd France and his team. So, and if you're Todd France, I mean, this is one of your bigger clients. So you're going to put whatever time and you're going to hold out to get the best possible deal. And that's still what they're going to do. And hey, just because you didn't get a long-term deal done now, you're still making $31.4 million on the tag this year.
That's a nice consolation prize, isn't it?
Right.
When we look at Dak as a player, certainly he had career highs in passing yardage this year, or last year. The Cowboys were only 8-8, and certainly he hasn't risen to the level of Patrick Mahomes, sort of that elite level, but he's been fairly consistent. So where do you think he fits in terms of what he's worth to the Cowboys and what he would be worth on the open market, in your opinion?
Man. I still think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. I think anyone would be crazy to assess that. I think he'd make a lot of money on the open market. I think just look at the reality of what it is to be a top tier, say even a top 15 quarterback probably in this league right now. You're going to get almost a record-setting deal, odds are pretty good for that you're going to set the market every time your contract comes up. Dak Prescott, like you said, he had great numbers last year. 4,900 passing yards. He was second only to Jameis Winston, and we know Jameis Winston, despite throwing for 5,000 yards, wasn't exactly a perfect season with the 30 for 30 touchdowns and interceptions. So Dak Prescott takes a lot of blame for the issues that this Cowboys franchise has. Dak Prescott can't play defense. He can't be doing DeMarcus Lawrence and Jalen Smith's job also. And I expect Dak to have an even better season, assuming we have a season this year. You think about the weapons he has, and now you throw in CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, to have him and a couple returning 1,000-yard receivers in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and oh, by the way, a guy named Ezekiel Elliott coming out of the backfield. And, oh, by the way, a new head coach in Mike McCarthy, who won a Super Bowl with a guy named Aaron Rodgers. You can kind of see why Dak Prescott would bet on himself still, right? Because I would feel like those numbers are going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just before we move on, how do you think this whole contract situation is going to end? Because certainly we'll be right back here next year as well.
Well, that's a great question, Kevin, and I'm not really sure. Hopefully this isn't a cheap answer, but I don't know. I mean, this thing was hard to figure out even coming down the last few weeks here. When you think about what's transpired, Dak, he signed the franchise tender on Father's Day, and then that left about a month window that they could have gotten this deal done. Seemed like enough time, a reasonable amount of time, to now focus in on however far they were apart and get something done, and it didn't happen. A lot of people thought it would have. We look back at last summer, and Ezekiel Elliott holds out, and they get something done at the deadline. But then with Dak, you don't. So I think, like I said earlier, there's no way he's going to get tagged 2 more times, because they're not going to pay him that $50 million. That would just kill the salary cap. But I don't think that it would be unreasonable for them to tag him again after this coming season. And then if you think about it, then they'll have from the tag deadline to when the deadline for players signing the tag, just like we had this year, to work that out. So I don't think that would be unreasonable. I do think they would try and get a deal done, and I think hopefully for the Cowboys they would, because regardless of the business side of this, you're going to create ill will, I think, if you drag this out with Dak, if you're Jerry Jones.
And certainly you have a new Texan quarterback, and Andy Dalton, who comes back home, so to speak, to lead the backup around for the Cowboys. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the addition of Andy Dalton to the roster.
I think it's a great addition. I'll say off the bat, there's no competition here. It's not like Andy Dalton is going to come in and challenge Dak Prescott for his job, but it's a security blanket that really the Cowboys have been used to having in recent times, but not this past year or the last couple of years. Cooper Rush, I forget the exact stat. He had maybe like 5 pass attempts or 5 completions in his career over the last few seasons. That was it. So to bring in a guy who's won, I think he has the most wins of any Bengals quarterback all time, to have that as your backup quarterback is an incredible luxury to have. Dak Prescott has been a really durable guy. I don't think he's missed a game. He was hurt this last year, and that caught like all kinds of attention. He missed the practice for the first time, and Cooper Rush was taking the reps. But you never know. And when you have so much talent like the Cowboys have, Kevin, this is a team that has talent to go to a Super Bowl. Whether or not they can put it together and actually do it with the new head coach is another story. But to have a guy like Andy Dalton, I've compared it to what the Eagles had a few years ago when you had Nick Foles waiting there in the wings, and he was able to step up and they won a Super Bowl. So who knows how important this addition could be.
Now, it's fair to say that Jason Garrett's tenure with the Cowboys was mediocre at best. He finished his tenure with a record of 85-67 and a 2-3 mark in the playoffs. And after nearly a decade of trying and failing to get the Cowboys over the hump, under Garrett's tutelage, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones has decided to go in a different direction, turning to veteran head coach Mike McCarthy to try and accomplish something he hasn't done since the mid-90s, win it all. So I asked Kolb to reflect on the Garrett era, the transition to Mike McCarthy, and whether he views this season as consequentially important for the Cowboys.
Well, first and foremost, let me say this. I am not a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm from the New England area, so I'm a Patriots fan. But even that said, Cowboys fans, they had a lot of them had enough of Jason Garrett and just the mediocrity that they felt came with his tenure. And there were times, I remember the Thanksgiving Day game that the Cowboys lost this past year, and people had fire Jason Garrett signs in the building, and they were booing to fire Garrett. So not a surprise. There was this, just the relationship between Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett was unique. I mean, Jerry Jones is a guy that's gone through, I don't know, what is it, 7 head coaches maybe before Jason Garrett, and Garrett was there just about as long as most of them combined. So I don't know exactly how people will look back on the Garrett era. I think in the end it'll be as a mediocre, underachieving time. But Jason Garrett did accomplish things here. I just think that will be overshadowed by the fact that he was here for so long and didn't get the team back to the Super Bowl.
And what do you think about the transition now to Mike McCarthy?
And Mike McCarthy, okay. I think it's an exciting transition. I think that the biggest thing that we'll be watching for is how much control will Mike McCarthy have. And so far, it seems like Jerry Jones, from what we've heard, from all the conversations they had, from what was said during the introductory press conference, it sounds like McCarthy will have a lot of control over a lot of things, which was something that was a big criticism of Jerry Jones with Jason Garrett, that Jerry was having too much control over what Garrett was and wasn't able to do. And I think the first time we really got to see any of that play out between Jones and McCarthy was during the draft, with drafting CeeDee Lamb. And McCarthy really praised Jerry for and Stephen Jones for allowing them to go with the best available player in CeeDee Lamb, because wide receiver was not the top need for the Cowboys going into this draft. We were all talking cornerback or defensive lineman. Those were kind of the top needs. Cornerback, rather, not quarterback. Excuse me. So to be able to go with CeeDee Lamb, and that was McCarthy's philosophy. He's a big best player available guy when it comes to the draft. So whether or not that will last and Jerry will butt out of what McCarthy wants him to butt out of will be interesting to see.
And would you characterize this season as consequentially important for the Cowboys? Because certainly they've put a lot of money into this team and they've made the big coaching switch. So would you characterize this season as consequential for the Cowboys?
Oh, it depends what you mean by consequential. I don't think they can be 8-8 again. I think that would be a huge disappointment. That said, if they are 8-8, what's going to happen? Mike McCarthy's not going to get fired after one season. He'll be back. I don't think that the expectation is that this team has to make the Super Bowl. but I do think people believe that they should be able to make the Super Bowl with the talent on the roster. But now last season, the expectation for Jason Garrett was if you don't make at least the NFC title game, or some people felt if he didn't make the Super Bowl, he's gone. And look what happened. But he had a long leash of several seasons where it built up to that point. I think it's an important season. I don't know what the benchmark is for success or disappointment, though. I don't think we're at that. This has to be a top 4 team level yet. It's tough to say with the new head coach.
And finally, I'm curious, what do you think about the prospect of having football this year? And where do you think the Cowboys stack up with the rest of the league?
Well, I would tend to say the Cowboys should be one of the top teams in the NFC. Just like we're talking about with the talent that's on that roster, including, and we've talked more about Dak and the offense, but the defense, they've made additions to. Secondary is a point that I'm still concerned about. You get a guy in Trevin Diggs in the draft out of Alabama in the second round, but you lose Byron Jones, who is your top corner, goes to Miami. Up front, though, they've added a lot of pieces when you think of Gerald McCoy and other guys through the draft as well, and some of the edge rushers they've brought in and are getting back. But as far as football this fall, Kevin, college football, I think, is not going to happen. High school football, I don't think is going to happen. I think of any pro sports league, regardless of what the sport is like, I think the NFL will push forward to make things happen however they can. But right now, like yesterday, we saw all these guys coming out on Twitter basically roasting the league for not having a plan out yet. And they're supposed to report to training camp coming up here at the end of the month. So
yeah, I think it's next week.
Yeah, maybe the 28th. So it's a mess right now, and I don't know how you make it work with the factor of you can't play in a bubble, which is tricky, and even the bubble scenario that we saw, like with the MLS, that's not perfect. But right now, the NBA is moving forward, the WNBA is moving forward, NHL is moving forward with it. Major League Baseball, they're not doing the bubble setup, but they're having some decent success with the testing. I saw a stat come out that they had like 10,500 tests this week and only 6 positives. So that's very reassuring to me. Now, the difference between baseball and football is that baseball, you're not breathing down each other's necks on the offensive and defensive lines every play of the game. So I want to feel like there's going to be an NFL season somehow. I can't see it with fans right now. But I think that the situation is really concerning with what we've seen with this COVID-19 and the fact that I don't think you can control it with the college and the high school games.
Hey, Jeff, we want to take a few seconds to thank you for your insights and perspective. We enjoyed the conversation and want to thank you for being here this afternoon. It was most appreciated.
Thanks, Kevin. Hope we can do it again soon.